The Heat made some roster changes this weekend, trading away a fan favorite player and adding a familiar face to the team. We break down why they traded Haywood Highsmith and re-signed Dru Smith on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. For daily content on the Heat, join more than 17,000 everydayers and click that subscribe button on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now. Have a ton of things to get to today after a busy weekend for the Heat that saw Haywood Highsmith get traded. The Heat got under the luxury tax. They re-signed Dru Smith. So a lot to get to, but let's just start with the terms of the deal. David, I think that's probably the best way to start this thing. So on Friday afternoon, the Heat trade Haywood Highsmith and a 2032 second-round pick for a heavily protected 2026 second-round pick. That pick is protected 31 to 55. So essentially, it only conveys next summer if Brooklyn finishes with one of the 5 best records in the league this season, which obviously is not going to happen. So it's kind of one of these fake picks that you just throw in to make the press release sound a little bit better. It is technically an asset because the Heat can technically trade it between now and February if somebody else wants something to look good on their email press release. But yeah, Miami essentially having to attach a future second-round pick that's unprotected in 2032 to Haywood Highsmith in order to get off of that salary and move him into Brooklyn's cap space. That got them under the luxury tax. And then on Saturday, they go ahead and sign Dru Smith to a 3-year deal. We learned that only the first year is fully guaranteed. The second and third year have partial guarantees to them, and we'll get more details on, when those partial guarantees and all those kinds of things kick in. I'm sure there's outs in that contract for Miami. So it's a 3-year deal, but it's not necessarily a commitment to Dru Smith for 3 years, although they obviously like him, as we'll talk about here. But to me, David, I look at this, when you kind of look at the net of all of the moves that they made, they swapped Haywood Highsmith and a second-round pick for Dru Smith and getting under the luxury tax. They are now $1.9 million under the tax. So that's essentially everything that happened here. I saw a lot of criticism over the move out there. I understand the criticism. It's tough to be like, we had to pay to get off of Haywood Highsmith, who was an asset, a very valuable player to this team. And then they have to use an asset to get off of his contract. They get under the tax, and what do they do with that space? Because at that point, they only had 13 players under contract. They had to sign somebody. Yeah. Well, rather than address some other needs on the roster that we could talk about, they re-signed Dru Smith, who last year his season was ended early by an Achilles injury in December. The year before that, he had his season ended early with an ACL tear in Cleveland. And this guy hasn't been able to stay healthy. And yet it does seem like Miami is very committed to him. Like I said, there's a ton to get to with this. We do want to zoom out with some of the issues on asset management and things like that. We can get to that here in a second. But I think the criticism maybe was a little overboard. The more I thought about it, the more I was just sort of okay with it, right? Again, I have some other issues about the asset management stuff that we can get to, but Look, Miami needed to get under the luxury tax. That was the number one priority. And that was the priority in moving Haywood Highsmith, right? Let's not get this twisted. They traded Haywood Highsmith to get under the tax. That was the primary reason they traded Highsmith, not to add Dru Smith. And I think it's being kind of looked at as they traded Highsmith in favor of Dru Smith. No, they traded Highsmith because they had to get under the tax. That was the primary reason. They did want to bring Dru Smith back, which is something that we've talked about and knew for weeks now. But this was the way that they decided that they could best get under the tax, and it was going to cost you something to get out of the luxury tax. Unfortunately, it cost you Haywood Highsmith and a second-round pick, but they were never going to be able to get under the tax without having to give up anything. Not in today's NBA. It's just too difficult to do that.
I get all that. And strangely enough, I'm on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. I think it was more indicative of a team that acts extremely short-sightedly when it comes to roster moves. And it seems, and we've talked about this before, in the pursuit of a superstar player or what happens after they fail to land said superstar. And it almost seems like there is no plan in place. And that's my feeling right now. This has nothing to do with Dru Smith, although I have my criticisms of that move, and it has nothing to do with Dru Smith, the player. But the fact that you feel that the top priority is to get under the luxury tax when you have a 3-and-D player on a relatively inexpensive deal seems ludicrous to me. One of the things that we've talked about all offseason is that now with the acquisition of Norm Powell, maybe you don't have superstar level talent on this roster. You've got star level talent in Hero, Powell, and Bam, but not superstar level. But you do also have a great strength in the terms of you have incredible depth, and you have depth at multiple positions, and you have depth in a position of need, which is wing. We've talked about this before. You asked Pat Riley several seasons ago in the offseason what he was looking for in the draft. Length, right? I mean, length and size. And Haywood provided that. For all of his shortcomings, you could count on him being the guy that you roll out there if you need a stop with a couple possessions left in the game and you want to try to ice it. Haywood was the guy. Sure, you have Bam Adebayo. Sure, you have Davion Mitchell. And maybe now you even have Dru Smith. But I think that kind of sells short what Haywood Highsmith was providing, on top of the fact that he also developed into a pretty consistent three-point shooter. Did he have the most polished offensive repertoire? Absolutely not. But he was a valuable player. And I still think that you could have found a way to move Haywood Highsmith in between now and February without having to attach one of the few picks that you have in the near future. It seems, again, very short-sighted. It's like, no. The only thing that matters right now is getting under the luxury tax. It's like, well, why? I don't give a damn about Mickey Harrison's money. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous to see that that's the priority, to make that the priority. It shouldn't be. This team could have moved Highsmith a few months from now without having to attach a second-round pick.
Maybe. We don't know that. We don't know that. And
why? Because of his injury issue?
Well, yes, he is coming off the injury. They're also, let's remember, the Heat brought no salary back in trading Haywood Highsmith. They were able to offload his entire salary.
Yeah, I know. Brooklyn did Miami a favor. I totally get that.
Well, not really. They had to attach a second round. They got a nice second-round pick out of it. I don't know if anybody did anybody a favor. But Brooklyn had cap space enough in order to take on the $5.5 million that Haywood Highsmith was owed. By February, we don't know if anybody has that kind of cap space available to them. We don't know what kind of moves are out there. And I understand the Mickey Harrison's part, and I got this question a lot when I was tweeting about this on Saturday, was why should we care about getting under the luxury tax? I agree. I think Mickey Harrison should pay for a good team. This is not a good enough team to pay the luxury tax for. And with the new cap restrictions, when you start getting into the repeater tax, which is why they needed to get under the luxury tax, it's not the fear of paying $1 million or $2 million over the tax this year. It's entering that repeater tax and then incurring the restrictions on the team building later. So there are definitely some ways that are short-sighted, and having to lose Haywood Highsmith, who you and I are very much on the Haywood Highsmith train, they are going to miss that guy on this team. They got worse. This is the first time in a long time that they got worse to get under the tax. We have not seen this Heat team make this dramatic of a, hey, this is about cost savings. We're going to take a step back in order to get under the tax. We haven't seen them do something quite like this in a very long time. And so it definitely hurts, and they're going to miss Haywood Highsmith. But I go back to what I said. If they had to get under the luxury tax, which Pat Riley said at his end of season press conference they had to do, there was other ways to do it, right? They could have waived and stretched Simone Fontecchio, right? That was out there. That was something that they were reportedly considering. They could have done that. And I got questions about why didn't they do that? They could have done it. They decided we would rather give up the second-round pick as opposed to take on that dead cap hit for the next 2 seasons if we waive and stretch Fontecchio. I don't know which one was the right way to go. Would you rather have the second-round pick, or would you rather have dead cap on your books for this year and the next 2 years after that? You could argue it either way. It's kind of lousy to have to deal with any of them. They decided we'd rather keep our cap space and as much flexibility moving forward as possible, even if that means getting rid of a second-round pick. Now, I do understand the concerns when you zoom out. It feels like they have saved cap space a lot by trading away second-round picks. They have a very bad habit of doing this exact thing.
Right. Especially if you're going to look at second-round picks as a way of bolstering your roster. I mean, we're talking about Pelle Larsson being a potentially significant rotation player. And I don't
have to now.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, this is a team now that's kind of built just like on a hope, on a prayer that somebody will find a way to pop, whether it's an undrafted signee or a second round pick, and that's it. Just feels like a very risky way of building a roster. And look, I understand when you look at all the quote unquote assets on this team, there isn't really anybody of much value that you're going to be able to trade away. Like, I think there's three players of very pointed value, and that's Bam, Hero, and Powell. After that, it's basically Nikola Jovic.
Wiggins.
Maybe
there's been
I don't think there's
Lakers,
that much of a
Bucks
market
are all
for Andrew
looking-
Wiggins. Yeah, I don't think there's that much of a market for Andrew Wiggins. I think the book
see.
is out, and yeah, I don't see, again, if you think you can move Wiggins, I don't see why you haven't moved him by now. So either there's no
for an
market.
upgrade. Yeah, I mean, and that obviously isn't out there. They value Andrew Wiggins. Like, the Lakers might want to trade you Dalton Connect for Andrew Wiggins. Obviously, Miami isn't interested in that. The Bucks have been reportedly out there interested in Andrew Wiggins. They got nothing to trade for him. So, look, there's other things that they maybe, why didn't they trade Terry Rozier? Are they going to? There's so much other
Nobody
things to
wants
get
Terry
to here.
Sure, I get that.
Let's talk about that, and I also want to talk about what this means for the rest of the roster and how they replace Haywood Highsmith. Let's do all of that next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel's Future Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches for just 24 hours. FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before Week 1 even kicks off, well, this is your moment. If you want to take a flyer in the MVP race, or maybe even start predicting who could be in the running for Super Bowl, it seems like a wide open field, so not much of a risk at this point. Why not take the choice right now? Place a little wager and see if you might hit big. Visit the FanDuel app today. Start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is just one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. We'll be right back.
So, to go back to why they traded Haywood Highsmith right now, and why, and some of the criticisms of the deal. Again, I'm not saying that they're without criticism. When you zoom out, Miami has a very bad habit of trading second-round picks to get off of salaries, whether it's trading away KZ Okpala and attaching assets to him, Victor Oladipo and attaching assets to him. You look at the undrafted free agents, the guys that they have developed, and you look at Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, Duncan Robinson, Haywood Highsmith, Caleb Martin, and they basically got a second-round pick back from Max Strus. Nothing really back for Haywood Highsmith here, because I'm not counting this sort of fake second-rounder, really.
No.
Even though it does, again, it's still technically on the books as an asset. They could still technically include it in a trade between now and February, but it's not of very much value. That, to me, is a problem. But they also made that decision, right? They made the decision of, we're not going to trade these guys early. We're gonna play these years out, and if we lose them for nothing in free agency, then so be it. This is the decision that they made, but they have lost a lot of talent now without getting very much back. But they've replaced that talent with first-round talent: Kel'el Ware, Nikola Jovic, Jaime Jaquez Jr. Now Yakachonis is here now. They've got Pelle Larsson, who they took in the second round and they like. They did acquire Davion Mitchell. So they have, it's not like that talent left and they didn't have backfill for it. They have backfilled it with arguably more talented players. But yeah, it's still a tough look when this team is consistently without the draft capital it needs to kind of make that big swing, it feels like, and they keep having to include the next second rounder available, because every year, right, another one unlocks, and it just feels like every year they trade that new unlocked second rounder in order to get off of some salary. You hope that the cycle ends here after having traded Haywood Highsmith in a second round pick and getting under the luxury tax for the season that they've basically been told that they need to get under the luxury tax for. But I just, while I understand all these criticisms, and I'm with you, the asset management thing is a concern. I still have yet to hear the idea that would have gotten Miami under the tax without giving up an asset.
No, I get
or
that.
incurring dead cap on future years.
I get that. You're in a tough spot. And I know I was being a little rash perhaps in saying about Harrison's money, etc. But I do think that the average fan has no reason to be like, yay, cap space. Like, for what purpose?
Well, the
And
flexibility,
yeah,
and that's our job to explain it, right? And that's like we get this question all the time, David. Like, you know that. Like, at the end of the day, getting under the tax now will help Miami build a better team going forward. That's it. Whether or not that's because potentially it opens up that we have no idea of it, of knowing it, but now they have that flexibility to do it because they're able to delay the clock on the repeater tax for another year.
I just think it's also Highsmith's departure, as you said before, and I think it's a well said fact. They're going to need a player like Highsmith, and we were talking about Andrew Wiggins and what his value is. Well, I don't think he's got any team that holds him in higher value than Miami, because he's now really your only wing defender, isn't he? I mean, you've got Powell's okay in that sense, not great. You've got Tyler.
Right. It's Wiggins.
That's it. You've got Donovan Mitchell as a point of attack defender.
Mitchell.
I'm sorry, yeah, not Donovan. Davion Mitchell as a point of attack defender. You've got Bam kind of as the anchor of your defense, and Khalil Ware as shot blocker, who still has to develop in some other ways defensively as well. So it's not, what is the identity of this team? And if you're going to keep counting on trying to be a top 10 defense, and we heard some recent statement from Udonis Haslem as to why he's extremely high on this version of the Heat, and he thinks that it's going to be a top 5 to top 10 defense. Are you sure about that? I mean, I know
Are
it's
we
just
overstating the loss of Haywood? I love Haywood, man, but like we're acting like all of a sudden now this team is adrift because they traded Haywood Highsmith. Like, you look at this roster. Look, there's the other part of this too, and look, I understand the concern. You're right. Haywood Highsmith was very valuable. He was a guy who routinely
It's a
found
domino.
himself
To
on
me,
the
it's
court.
a domino. It's now all of a sudden you trade away one key piece of the rotation, and the idea that we floated around where now you've got 10 to 11 playable players on a nightly basis. Well, you want to have those options. Well, guess what? Andrew Wiggins is going to get hurt at some point. Jaime Jaquez is going to get hurt at some point. Nikola Jovic is going to get hurt at some point. So who are you going to play in their place?
Right.
And I know maybe that's a very negative way of looking at it, but I still tend to think of it as that kind of domino that really it could fall in a way that could really be
this is where the
damaging
youth
to Miami.
movement comes in, right? Because, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but there's also, they're out there being like, hey, we're going to lean into the youth a little bit here. Okay,
Keshad
good way to
Johnson.
do it. Jaime Jaquez Jr., he's going to have to defend. Nikola Jovic is going to have to defend. Kasparis Yakachonis is going to have to defend. Pelle Larsson is going to... These are the guys. Now, when you look at this depth chart, to me, there's a clear top 9. Haywood, there's a clear top 10. Haywood was the 10th guy. Now maybe it's Dru Smith, right? At the end of games, in a best-case scenario, Haywood isn't going to be out there. The end of game lineup to me was going to be Davion Mitchell, Tyler Hero, Norm Powell, Wiggins, and Bam.
Yeah.
At the end of most games. Wiggins is going to have to do a heavy lift. So is everybody else. And that's just the way it's going to be now. And you don't have that insurance in Haywood Highsmith, but it's a tough loss. They had to get under the tax. This is the way they did it. Why didn't they trade Terry Rozier? They tried. They have tried to trade Terry. You think it was... If you're upset about attaching a 2032 second round pick to get off of Haywood Highsmith, I hate to break it to you, it was going to be more than that to get off of Terry Rozier.
Yeah, two firsts to move Terry Rozier.
And there were conversations with Washington involving Marcus Smart. Washington wanted draft compensation back. Also, part of that was that Marcus Smart was a little bit more inclined to just accept a buyout,
right,
and help Washington out that way, and direct himself to the Lakers where Luka Doncic was recruiting him. So, those conversations ended up stalling out, and that option was no longer on the table after the buyout and Smart signed with the Lakers. So this is where they ended up. Fontecchio told us, on Zoom a few weeks ago, he thinks he could be a better defender. We'll see. Sure. Keshad Johnson, he's got an opportunity here. They moved him up to the roster. Again, not really sure why, but it's not like Keshad took Haywood's spot either. I saw this in a lot of places too. That's not... You have to have at least 14 guys under contract. Keshad is literally the cheapest player available to them because he's got basically 0 years of service, moving just into a standard roster spot. So it's not like they picked Keshad over Haywood, or if they never signed him, they were gonna have an empty. If they didn't sign him, somebody else would be in that roster spot. They would still be over the luxury tax. This way, they were actually a little bit less over the luxury tax as they would have been if they had signed a veteran to that spot. I hope that made sense. But
No, it does. But it does create an opportunity for
It does.
Kashot, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think it's one that we talked about him as a poor man's, and Haywood Highsmith was a poor man 3-and-D
Scout Team
option
Haywood
in the first place. Scout Team Haywood. And it's not a knock on him. I mean, it's just there's only so many players that can contribute at a very high level. So I think there are very low expectations for Kashot Johnson, as well as they should be. And yet now those expectations become just a little bit bigger, and he has to be able to live up to those because he's the option. He's the fallback. And if those dominoes do fall, as they invariably will over the course of the season, because we've just seen player get hurt after player gets hurt, and next thing you know, you're kind of going deep in there on the rotation. Johnson has to find a way to step up.
Yep.
And he's got to be a consistent shooter. He's going to be able to attack. He's going to be able to bring high-level defense, etc. So, look, and I know we'll talk about Dru in a second. Before he got hurt, he was playing phenomenally. He was making all those kind of winning plays. Maybe they've convinced themselves that it's not really that much of a downgrade from Haywood to Dru Smith, and he can be that kind of guy. He can be that rotational player. I suppose anything is possible.
They decided that, Eric Spoelstra loves Dru Smith, and he was a driving force in this decision. But they decided, again, rightly or wrong, I'm just telling people what they decided. Yeah. They decided Dru Smith and getting out of the luxury tax, or Haywood Highsmith and the second-round pick, we're picking Dru Smith and out of the luxury tax. They don't think that the decline from Haywood to Dru Smith is enough to warrant being in the luxury tax for, and it was actually fine to move off that second-round pick in order to avoid the luxury tax. Let's also remember here, I know Dru Smith is coming off of a major leg injury that ended his season. Haywood Highsmith is also coming off of a major knee injury now. And I do wonder that's how much of that is a factor in them having to attach a second-round pick to him. Brooklyn took on Haywood Highsmith coming off, just tore his MCL, just underwent major surgery.
Yeah.
And they took him onto their books, all $5.5 million just for a second-round pick. I just try to remind people of that. And with
Miami
Brooklyn, which the only team in the league with that kind of cap space.
Sure.
They had all the leverage in this. And it sucks to see Haywood traded and attaching a second-round pick to him, considering what we know his value to be when he's healthy and he's out there. Like that, if he gets back to where he was, this is a steal for Brooklyn. But it's not about what you deserve necessarily, or you're not entitled to anything in the NBA. It's leverage. Everything is about leverage. And in this instance, Brooklyn had all of the leverage. And this was Miami's only way to get out of the tax. There was never going to be a way for Miami to get out of the tax without some kind of pain. And this was going to be, and this was it. In this instance, they saw a window. They said, we have to do it now. We don't think that cap space might not be available months from now. We have an opportunity to do it. This is our top priority. Let's get this thing done and let's move forward. But the Heat, did they necessarily have to go the Dru Smith route? Could they have done another thing with this roster spot that would have had Heat fans a little bit happier with the decision? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Heat. So when the Heat traded Haywood on Friday, it became clear pretty quickly that they were going to bring back Dru Smith, and that was made official on Saturday. Yeah. But this was a couple of days after they had worked out Kai Jones at Kaseya Center. We talked about that on an episode last week. There was also some rumblings about them being interested in Trey Lyles, who I still think I have a little bit of stock in, David, from back in his Kentucky days. I think I still have a little bit of Trey Lyles stock. But instead of going with a big man, and you and I have talked a lot about their desperate need for a body back there, just somebody, if one of Khalil or Bam go down, because it's always going to be Bam and Khalil mostly out there at center, but if one of them gets hurt, tweaks a hamstring, in foul trouble, whatever, it's Vlad Golden. That's it. And Nikola Jovic, I suppose, maybe moonlighting a little bit at the 5, which is a problem because that's not his position. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a little confusing as to why they didn't bring a center on board, considering the need there at that position. But obviously, if they really wanted Kai Jones, they just saw him, they could have brought him on, right? They decided for whatever reason that they just weren't interested in going in that direction.
Yeah, I get it. I know I'm having a hard time just rationalizing this one because it does seem like center is such a glaring position of need. You've got 2.5 center options, and Vlad Golden is not an option. I don't count him that way. I don't think that's realistic. I mean, he'd have to have a tremendous camp, and even then, I would still be highly dubious of what he's able to contribute moving forward. So that's like going to camp knowing that Orlando Robinson is your only backup center, and then you're totally fine with it. And even that might be an upgrade over what Miami currently has on the roster. So
He's played NBA minutes.
yes, that's the thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's at least there's that. So it's just is the intention just to fully lean into small ball and just hope and pray for the best, and that nobody gets hurt, and you can at least roll out some kind of a center from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
I guess so. I mean, I guess they're looking at it as, well, you know what, Bam rarely gets hurt. If something happens to Khalil, we can always slide Bam into the starting spot, I guess, and kind of tinker with the rotation where you put Nico at the 4,
Mm-hmm.
playing alongside Bam. So I guess there's other options there. I don't know.
It's confusing. This is the part that confuses me. Why not? And then why not wait to sign Dru Smith? Why did you have to do it on Saturday? Is my question. I don't know that there was a ton of teams lining up to make sure that they got Dru Smith coming off of 2 major leg injuries.
They want to reward him. And this is more, I think, about Miami loving Dru Smith than their concerns about losing Dru Smith to somebody else. They just really
They
want
obviously
him
wanted him on the roster, which is something that we knew.
Yeah.
So I still can't believe that this is going to be the plan. Like, this is at big man. I cannot believe that this is going to be the plan. Like, something has to give. They still have time to make other moves. They could still scan the market for Terry Rozier trades. They could still trade another rotation player for a backup center. Maybe they do sign another center to a 2-way contract, and they say, okay, between Vlad Golden and this center on a 2-way contract, maybe we could scrounge together enough. We are asked. They got under the tax. They're about $1.9 million under the tax right now. Is that enough room to go and sign another player? Not right now. They can sign a 15th player, but that would be mid-season when the salaries are truncated, right? So, they could get to about the halfway point of the season and then sign somebody for the rest of the year. But by then, it might be too late. Like, you need a body in there. Maybe it's just Jovic and Golden as break glass in case of emergencies, and it's hope that we get 48 minutes of Bam and Ware, and neither of them gets into foul trouble ever. This is the part I'm struggling with, is what's the plan at that part, or at that position?
No, you're kind of stuck. I don't know if I've ever seen an NBA roster that has such a glaring hole at one position, and what's the purpose of drafting a Yakuchonis if you're going to sign Dru Smith and you know how much you want him on this roster? Like, I don't know.
Brought that up.
Couldn't there have been a center position? Yeah, couldn't there have been a center in the draft that might have filled an obvious area of need?
Or you've got Yakuchonis. Does that mean that you no longer need Dru Smith, right? So I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know that Yakuchonis. I don't know that the Heat view him as a pure point guard very much. They might be viewing Yakuchonis more as a combo guard at this point, and I think they think they have 2-3 pure point guards on the roster now between Davion Mitchell, Dru Smith, and Terry Rozier. And they might be looking at Yakuchonis as more of a combo guard, which is my sense. I don't think that they want to put all their eggs in the Yakuchonis as a point guard basket.
You realize you named 3 point guards and none of them are going to be starting at point guard. That's Tyler Hero's spot to lose.
That's the other thing, right? It's Tyler Hero and Norm Powell in that backcourt. So where are the Dru Smith minutes, right? Because Davion's going to get minutes. I guess the backup 2-guard spot is available, so maybe that's Dru Smith. Maybe
Terry Rozier.
Maybe it's Terry. Maybe it's Pella. Maybe it's Yakuchonis. Although, I do think that they're going to slow roll Yakuchonis in a way that was similar to Khalil in Khalil's rookie year. But they've got, look, I also thought they were a guard short, considering that I don't think we want to count on any Rozier minutes, and you don't know what you're going to get from Yakuchonis. So I did think they needed a guard, but it is a little strange how this is working out. But they love Dru Smith, man. They love him. They can't quit him.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, the winning plays thing, like we saw Spo gush about Dru when he had those winning plays, when he had some big moments there. And I say big because they weren't within context of the regular season, so not really that big, but still they led to some wins. And then unfortunately he gets hurt. But this is they love his ability to come back, that he doesn't give up, that he keeps trying.
He was playing
And
great, man. Like before
really
he got hurt
he
in
was a
December,
positive factor.
he was playing the full fourth quarters in multiple games.
That's I can't. I think I
But he
blocked
was
that
good.
out.
He was earning it. Like it wasn't like this was some sort of injury riddled team that he was just out there. Like he was playing
You're
over
right.
guys.
He's not. I feel like he's become an easy punching bag, or
Yeah.
like kind of a representative of Miami's front office failings or something like that. And that's not fair, because he had, to his point, been playing very well. But it just, if you're looking at this roster and saying, we're not good enough to pay the luxury tax for, but what really puts us over the top is Dru Smith. It's like, it just kind of adds salt to the wound that this team isn't very good, that we're making moves to trade away a guy like Highsmith that is, I think, more valuable than Dru Smith, and has an obvious role and was looking to probably play some significant minutes. And then you're kind of just making these short-term, short-sighted roster moves, and then the solution is to say, well, hey, we've got Dru Smith here. It's not fair to Dru. He's never going to get, I think, the appreciation that he probably deserves, and we should probably be looking at it in a much more positive way. What a great success story. He's come back from multiple injuries, still finds a way there, but instead
But we don't know.
feels like the opposite.
I get it.
Yeah.
We don't know that it's a success story.
Absolutely.
Right?
Hey, he's on the roster in the first place is a success, though, for him.
It's a
and
success
I think
story for Dru. Yeah, he finally got the standard contract, 100%. That is a success story. It was devastatingly brutal. He got hurt. He was in line. I mean, he was about to sign that standard contract within days of that Achilles tear in December, and then that's why Kashad ends up on the standard roster, right? So that's at least for the rest of the season, and they re-signed him this summer again, whatever. But it's a success story for him so far. We'll see if it works out. I can't get to the level that it felt like a lot of Heat fans were in terms of the outrage over this move. And you're right. Like Dru Smith has almost become a scapegoat, the avatar of all this front office's stubbornness, and Pat is asleep at the wheel and all this kind of stuff. Well, if Dru Smith comes back and plays like he was in December, this is a win. This is a net win for Miami, because they get under the tax and they get a very impactful player. I don't know what his role necessarily on the team is going to be now with Davion Mitchell. That's why I kind of thought he was going to be gone. And then you hear earlier this summer that they still want to bring him back. And I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. We'll see how they do it. And then to move Haywood Highsmith in order to facilitate this is a little bit of a tough pill to swallow and a little confusing, considering the need at backup center here. They still have a lot of time between now and the start of the season. And it feels like there's another move here, because I just can't believe that this is the plan at backup center. It does make you wonder why they did this way, and why they brought Dru Smith back so quickly, but they obviously wanted to bring him back. So we'll see.
Is Kai Jones not eligible for a two-way?
He is not eligible for a
That's
two-way.
right. Okay. I just wanted to confirm.
Yeah, neither is Trey Lyles, which is obvious.
No, obviously not.
I should mention that. Yeah. So I don't know, man. Like, who knows? They could bring somebody in on a two-way, patch together the backup center job for a few months until you get into January, February, and then sign somebody for the rest of the season. That is an option, but it just feels like if you do bring somebody to two-way, somebody with some proven NBA minutes, and not Vlad Golden, who looked fine in Vegas, but I don't know that he's ready to play any minutes. So
right.
We'll see what happens there. I think we covered a lot of ground here with the Highsmith, Dru Smith stuff. We could probably talk about this for another 30 minutes, David. But overall, like they're again, the sense of outrage. Again, this is maybe just anecdotal for me on Heat Twitter on Saturday immediately after the news. But I have concerns about their asset management. It's definitely a concern. The concern about backup center is there. Why re-sign Dru Smith right away? Why not give it a little bit more time to see maybe other options flesh out? Whatever. Right. I can't get to the level of outrage. I'm sorry, I can't do it. I love Haywood. I love everything that he represented. I loved having him here. I thought he was impactful. I just can't get to the point of, well, the Heat front office is lost. Fire everybody. Like I'm sorry, I can't get to that level. I can't meet you there if that's what you are as a fan. Like I can't meet you there. I understand the concerns, but I can't meet that level of outrage. David, where are you? Final word on it. Like outraged, okay about it, whatever, ho hum. Where are you?
I think I've just kind of resigned to it more than anything else. Like I don't think I'm outraged.
That's a good word.
I think it's just this is where they're at. I just also personally liked Haywood, and also always appreciated, talking to him and him being around the team, and just the kind of vibes he always brought there. And I thought he would have provided value. It's not the great loss that some people have made it seem like. I even made it sound a little hyperbolic in terms of him being a potential domino, but I do believe that's the case. And look, I am hopeful and optimistic that Dru can contribute at a high level. So it's all kind of, it feels like a perfect crap storm that's kind of been boiling over all summer long. It's like, what's the plan here? For a fan base that has historically come to expect major roster shakeups, and we heard this from Bam Adebayo about the man with the silver hair and everything else. Like, we thought this was going to be a roster that was going to be overturned fairly completely because they needed to be more competitive. And we saw other teams, even in their own division, making big moves. Miami's offseason now consists of trading away Haywood Highsmith, Kevin Love, Kyle Anderson, and acquiring Yakachionis, Dru Smith, and Norm Powell. I don't know how to make it.
We were all like kind of liking the Heat's offseason until they traded Haywood.
Yeah,
everybody was sort of liking it, and then they trade Haywood, and it's like, okay. And that's why I go back to, like, we're gonna miss them, but we're acting like it's all of a sudden the offseason has just been blown to smithereens, and it's like, just can we hold on for a second? And the people wanted change. You got it now. They had to attach a second rounder. That's not great. He's also coming off of he just tore his MCL. We don't know what that's going to be. I think that impacted the market a little bit on some of these conversations. But
it's true. It's the Dru Smith thing. It's just
it's the Dru Smith thing combined with the fact that Terry Rozier is still on this roster.
That's a good point. And I had not thought.
I think everybody was like, that's the next move. And then I think that's why Heat fans were shocked to see Haywood Highsmith getting reported on.
A guy who actually plays well over Terry. But, to the point I made earlier about Haslam's comments, like, of all the players that he listed on this roster, he mentions Rozier as being a contributor. Maybe there's more to it. We have no choice but to try and be optimistic. And maybe there's some work behind the scenes. Maybe he's going to bounce back. You have to hope for the best because he's not going anywhere. There's just no market for Terry Rozier, nor should there be, based on what we saw from him last season and his current salary. He's just not that kind of player. Maybe if he improves play between now and February as an expiring contract, that might represent some sort of value for a team. But at this point in time, before the season even starts, no, you're not going to move him.
Youth movement people. This is
Here's your chance.
This is it, man. Like, you look at those minutes. It's Jaime, it's Pella, it's Nico, it's Yakachonis, it's Kashad. This is a win for the youth movement people, I guess.
Dru's youth movement, right? Even though this is his third NBA season.
He is 20. Dru Smith is 28 years old, but Haywood was secretly 30. So I don't know. They did get. And look, you wanted to shake it up. Fontecchio in, Haywood out. That's different. That's moving deck chairs. This is sort of another thing. I'm not trying to like cover anybody's butt here in terms of the trade. I can't hit that. Like, we've talked about the concerns. I just can't hit outrage levels the way that it feels like some Heat fans want to hit. I can't. That's fair. Can't go there with you guys. But thanks for making us your first listen every day. For your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast where there is no offseason. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.